Hello, I'm Rob Melrose. I'm the artistic director of the Alley Theater, and I'm also the director of 1984. And I wanted to thank all of you who joined us for our community viewing last night of 1984. And thank you all so much for your questions, which I have right in front of me, and I am excited to answer them for you. So the first question was the show done in one taping? Yes, pretty much yes. The slight, little safety net we gave ourselves is we started at the beginning. We had three cameras. We ran the entire show, and then we gave ourselves a little time at the end to repeat moments that may not have gone exactly the way we wanted. And so we had about 3 moments per act. So we ran the show, and then we had 6 moments that we reshot, and those got cut in to replace those little trouble spots. But the idea of the taping wasn't to create a movie of our play, but actually to kind of capture the live event, the same way you might with a sporting event. And I feel like the Metropolitan Opera and National Theatre Live have done such a wonderful job of kind of showing how exciting it can be to not make a play into a movie, but really capture the excitement of a play that doesn't stop. And also the actors didn't want to stop either. They really feel that what feeds their performance is the momentum and having one moment build on another instead of breaking up into little pieces. So we just ran it and didn't stop. Next question. Did you change any of the blocking because of the cameras? That makes a lot of sense because, as you know, the alley is in a thrust configuration, which means that the audience is on 3 sides. So since the camera is just one side, it would make sense to say, well, now we don't have to worry about people sitting in the side seats. We can do it all for the camera. But I'm pleased to say we only changed 1 moment in the entire play, and that moment is when Todd Waite, the first time he is Big Brother, because we thought it was such an important moment to see the idea of Big Brother. He gave the first part of his speech out to the center section of the audience, where in a normal performance he just gives it to the actors upstage of him, which means that the people on both sides have a perfect view, but the people in the center section have kind of a side view of him. But since there are no sides in a filming, we decided that was the one moment that made sense to have him turn out. But really, that's it, which I think speaks really well for how well the play plays for an audience anywhere in our theater. So that was kind of cool. Let's see. For filming, did you consider asking the actors to change their voicing? No, we really didn't. We wanted, again, we could have said we're making a movie and everything's different, but we wanted it to be just like a real performance. And so they gave their full-on theatrical performances. Now, what is interesting about this play is early on in the process, our sound designer, Cliff Gruthers, said, hey, because this play is futuristic, and I can imagine it having a really aggressive sound score, what would you think about all the actors having body mics, a mic that is either here or is here, to pick up the sound of their voice, and that way I can really push the sound design without worrying about whether the audience can hear the actors or not. And the neat thing about the Alley Theater is the acoustics are so great. In most shows, we have no miking, and we just have the actors speak, and everybody can hear them. But in 1984, for this particular reason of the kind of futuristic sound design, we gave everybody body mics. But that meant that when it came to filming, it was we were perfectly situated because we had a feed. We had a feed of the sound design, and then we had an individual feed of each of the six performers. And so the sound mixer was able to take those all those feeds and kind of mix together a really great sounding show. So it really worked out in our advantage. So yeah. Um, Now, how do the actors feel doing a performance without an audience? Well, it's interesting. I mean, you know, I can tell you what I think from talking to them. They might have they all have different opinions and different answers, but for the most part, it's kind of weird because they really they feed off of the audience. I mean, it's a live event, and even though you may not think 1984 is a particularly funny play, there are laughs, and those laughs in the play, like shit bags, for example. I mean that gets a laugh every time, and you know the little laugh lines kind of are nice because it kind of lets the audience tell us, as to tell the performers on stage, we're here with you, we're following it, we're in it with you. So that feedback becomes really important, and it kind of lets us take the audience on a journey. So I mean, it's why one of the actors said, and I know now I do this theater and not film, because I think it's really weird performing without an audience. It feels empty. However, on the other side, even though that actor felt that way, um, I'm so pleased and amazed how full the performances are, even though there was no audience there, and it's because they're professionals, and the resident acting company, they're so used to performing, they're performing all the time, that even in rehearsal they are giving it their all, and the performance is great. And watching the video, I'm kind of astounded that these actors are performing in an empty room, and they're giving so much of themselves. It's really a testament to our resident acting company and how wonderful they are. Let's see. Next question is, how well do you think the adaptation tells the story? What difficulties were there in bringing a largely internal piece to the stage? Well, all the credit goes to Michael Gene Sullivan, who's the adapter he's the playwright, and he's the person who adapted the novel. There was a production on Broadway that I didn't see. It was from London, from the West End. What I heard is it took the appendix of the novel as kind of a jumping off place, and kind of created their own experience. This Michael Gene Sullivan's piece is really faithful to the novel, and I've read the novel a couple times, and I was training for a marathon earlier this year, and so I would also listen to it on Audible, and it takes about 13 hours to speak the entire novel. So the fact that this is 2 hours long, and it tells most of the story, it really shows Michael Gene Sullivan's skill in what he kept and what he cut out, because the events are really there. The other amazing innovation, because yes, it's a very internal story, but an amazing innovation that Michael G. Sullivan created is the idea that the play kind of starts in part 3 with the in room 101, and being imprisoned in the Ministry of Love. And so all parts 1 and 2 are actually told not in flashback, but told as his interrogation. That Michael Gene Sullivan has imagined that these 4 crack interrogators have gotten his diary, they've memorized parts of his diary, and they're ready to perform parts of his diary as a way of interrogating him. And it's a pretty brilliant way of, I think, of telling the story of parts 1 and 2. And then, of course, at a certain point, the play catches up with the diary, and we're in the present moment, and Winston is being tortured in real time, which I think is, that's an exciting moment for me. So I think it's, I think he's just done a great job, and we're just interpreting it and performing it, but he did the hard work there. Great. Next question is, how much space is under the stage for things like lowering the set of a trapdoor, like in Kyrie Nuevo? Well, that's a good question. I think it's about 14 feet, 13 or 14 feet, but it doesn't mean you can have a 14 feet set piece come up out of the floor. And I learned this through Winter's Tale, that with Winter's Tale we really got the max with our elevator that became the prison, and it became the courtroom, because under part of those 13 feet have to be the machine and the mechanism that bring the thing out. Of course, for Kyoto Nuevo, for a person, it's fine. There's plenty of room to sneak a person in and out. Even though, is that what really happened in Kyoto Nuevo? Well, who knows? Maybe he really disappeared, and so he was really being thrown up in that blanket. But in 1984, the elevator for that is only 4 feet tall. So it's our little, it becomes the bed, it becomes the desk, and then it becomes kind of a lectern for the book. And the highest up it is when it's the lectern for Goldstein's book. And I think that's about 4 feet. So we've got plenty of room, and it worked so smoothly. I don't think there was ever a moment in rehearsal where the elevator gave us any problems. It was just, and I love the speed that it moves at. It's just really great. Great. Where did the concept for the bowl lights and the movable platform come from? That was the first question. There's another one. So that's all Michael Locher, and kind of the design inspirations. One thing I knew I wanted is I wanted the set to have some kind of relationship with the building we're in, and for those of you who haven't been to the alley and only got to watch it from your homes outside of Texas, we're in the intermission section. You get to see a little bit of the outside of our building, but our theater, is one of the most famous examples of a style of architecture called brutalism. It's by Ulrich Franzen, and it looks like a big cement castle, and that's our real building. And so I said I love our building, and I love the concept of brutalism, because it kind of is like a 60s idea of the future, of something futuristic, and it's made of cement, and it's a little oppressive, and it feels powerful. And I felt like, well, that would be great if we could get that sense in there. And then Michael Locher looked at a lot of Stanley Kubrick films. One thing we said is, if Stanley Kubrick never made a 1984, but if he did, what would it look like? And that was another design inspiration. So we looked at movies like 2001 and Dr. Strangelove, and of course the chandelier comes very much from Dr. Strangelove, the big circular chandelier. And then I think the plexiglass floor and the plexiglass ceiling with all these lights kind of came from Michael Locher, our set designer's imagination. And but it comes from this idea that the room 101 is a room where there is no darkness. And what better way to have no darkness than just have lights everywhere shining? And it kind of keeps a feeling of intense interrogation. So that's kind of where that all came from. Is that next question? Was the Steve Jobs-esque costuming for O'Brien intentional? It wasn't to be not really to be Steve Jobs, but how it was intentional was, we often when you see a production 1984, everybody's in, overall coveralls, and it's brown and it's dirty, and we kind of thought, well, but this is really the inner party, and in some ways it's the inner party, because O'Brien has a status level that's higher than everybody else. So we wanted to create a uniform look, kind of a gray business suit kind of look for everybody, but we wanted there to be a little bit of difference, so we could feel a little bit of status difference in the characters. And then it's subtle between the four interrogators, but we really wanted to be clear that O'Brien is kind of the peak. So that kind of turtleneck and his beautiful suit coat is kind of a way of making him look, very high up and very sophisticated. And maybe subconsciously Steve Jobs suggests that, but there was no, we really went out of our way not to make a lot of contemporary references, because people have asked, oh, is this person or is this that person? But we kind of said to ourselves, we think, but this play has a lot to say to the year 2020, even more than perhaps it had to say to 1984. I grew up, I was 14 in 1984, and I remember leg warmers and neon hair and Gordon Gekko and Greed is Good, and it felt like, and Reaganism and individualism, and it felt like, George Orwell couldn't have missed the mark any further, because this is the era of just insane individualism, and we're so far from the cookie cutouts of 1984. But when 2020 came around, you kind of realize, well, okay, we're not all, cardboard cutouts of each other, but every phone has a camera, every computer has a camera, every street corner has cameras. We're under surveillance all the time. We've got Siri, we've got Alexa, and so in a lot of ways, I think 1984 has more to say to 2020. At the same time, politically, we felt like, we don't want to. We think the best way to do this play is just to do the best 1984 we possibly can, and then people can make their own connections with anything politically happening today, rather than kind of hit some nail on the head, hit someone over the head. We just thought that's the best way. So, long way of saying, yeah, we did not purposely, intentionally want to make a connection between O'Brien and Steve Jobs. Oh, and this is, our last question, and a question I absolutely love, and it kind of shows the magic of theater, which is, did we use live rats in that one scene? And the answer is no, not at all. We did a number of really interesting things. These are plush rats, but one thing, and when we first got them in the rehearsal hall, we thought, oh my God, how are we going to fool the audience into thinking that these are live rats because they're so obviously little plushies, right? But the wonderful props department put pieces of wire in their tails, so the tails would kind of whip around, and then the costume department gave Chris these wonderful black latex gloves, and he used the gloves to manipulate the rats in this great cage, and they're hidden. And so he does all the puppeting of those rats, so it really looks like he's got something, vicious in his hands. And then he sticks it in the hat, and then when it gets in the hat, we have two things happening. We have lights kind of flickering and pulsing, so it looks like something's going on in there. And then we've got a toy car in that tube, and it is running around, and it's got a little silhouette of a rat. So if you look closely, you see 2 times a little rat whips around there, but it is not a real rat. No live animals were harmed in the creation of the Alley's production of 1984. So that's our last question. One, thank you again so much for being with us for our community night. I can't wait until the theater reopens and I see you all back. And in the meantime, if you wouldn't mind considering making a donation to the Alley, we're doing an emergency fundraising campaign to get us through this difficult time, and we could certainly use everyone's help. So if you're able to, please give to the Alley. And thank you so much. And please be on the lookout for more things from the Alley. We're doing a virtual program we're calling Alley at Home. We'll have mystery stories for you by a resident acting company, read by a resident acting company, as well as Shakespeare sonnets and all kinds of ways you can stay connected to the Alley even during this time when the theaters are closed. Thank you so much, and see you again soon.